Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Hello, everybody. Oh, okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Here Be Dragons. This is the first in a new series that we're going to try out. We're calling it Retro Review, where we're going to talk about a nerd classic film. Now, we're probably cheating a little bit with this one. This movie is just maybe a classic, but I don't know anybody in my nerd circle that hasn't seen it. And everybody I know loves it. So we might as well take our time, pour through it scene by scene. I've got lots and lots and lots, 6 pages of notes, I think. 6.5 pages of notes. So we're going to really dig into it. The movie, The Princess Bride from 1987.
Yeah, I think it qualifies as a cult classic. Even though I guess it is pretty widely loved, but there's something about it that still seems to fit the criteria. I think it's because it wasn't as big of a hit initially, and then it caught on over time. So I think it qualifies.
Okay. Yeah, because this movie did not hit big in the box office. It found its success on like home video and then word of mouth beyond that. So the movie was written by William Goldman, who also wrote the book, The Princess Bride. But the book and the movie are kind of different, and we are here to talk about the film. So I'm not even going to worry about the book in this situation. It was directed by Rob Reiner, and it stars Cary Elwes as Westley and Robin Wright in her first ever movie as Princess Buttercup. And there's plenty of other great other actors in the movie, other great cameos that come around. And I think we're going to get into all of that. But first, John, I want to ask you, because I took my notes and I counted. What do you think is the most quoted, or not most quoted, but what line is repeated the most often in the movie?
I mean, I'm trying to make sure.
Okay. I'm going to give you 3 choices. Okay. Inconceivable.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You kill my father. Prepare to die. Or As You Wish.
Shoot.
I see some people in the.
I mean, am I about to lose my cred as a fan of the movie?
No, because I didn't know until I literally went through and counted when I watched it earlier.
I genuinely think it is the Inigo Montoya line, but I guess I'm probably wrong. Which is it?
It is not that line. That line is spoken 6 times in the movie. But As You Wish is said 7 times, although 3 of them are by Westley, 4 of them are by Westley, and 3 of them are by the grandfather.
Okay. You know what it is? What throws me off is because Mandy Patinkin goes through his spiel and he repeats the line several times. So it feels like it's said more times than it actually is.
He says it one time when he tells Westley, this is what I'm going to say. And then he says it to Count Rugen 5 times. I counted. I'm a nerd. What can I say? I see people. Helena's asking if I feel better. I do, Helena. I feel almost completely well. Thank you for asking. A lot of great people in the chat for this wonderful movie too. We haven't done shout outs to people who are in the chat in a while, so I'm going to do that. I see Jess. I see my buddy John here. John. Hi, John. Hi, Jess. Ridiculous Ed Tollett, #1 patron in the world. How you doing, my man? Jaded Redhead, Kelly. Glad you didn't catch anything nasty while you were sailing around the world. See Wheezy Squeezebox, OTDA. Helena's in the chat. My brother Neil, my mom, Betsy, Danny McKay. Did I miss anybody? I haven't seen anybody else yet. Sunflower Beth, Lady Leaf, History of Westeros. Hi, everybody. And thanks for coming by because, yeah, we're just now getting really started. Danny McKay says I voted for Galaxy Quest. Galaxy Quest is a fine vote, and I imagine we'll get to it because that movie is fantastic. Okay, so starting with my copious notes, I also wrote down a lot of the quotes from this movie because this is the most eminently quotable movie of all time, I think. It's certainly the movie I've quoted the most in my life. Have fun storming the castle is a thing that I say to my mom, or she'll say to me when we're leaving the house. I love this. Did we plan our t-shirts? No, we just got lucky. We did not plan this. We just showed up to the dance wearing the same dress.
This is what I get when this is the only Sandrixian shirt that I have. I need to correct that.
Yeah, you do. I've got a couple different ones. If you throw up good quotes from the movie, I'm just going to highlight them. So OTDA, there you go. I love, this is the most eminently quotable movie. But yes, the movie opens with a cough which is not something I might have noticed if we weren't in the middle of a healthcare scare right now, but it does.
It did feel kind of weird turning this on and having it start with that. It's like, okay, I guess this is a fitting movie. Because also it is kind of the while you're sick movie, isn't it?
Right.
It's the ultimate feel-good movie.
Yeah, and normally coughing in a movie is a death sentence, but not in this case.
Yeah.
Okay, but it opens with that, and we get a very 90s kid's bedroom with a 12-year-old who was probably 12, and this movie came out in 1987, which means I would have turned 13 that year. So I am Fred Savage in this movie when it came out. And now I'm much closer to Peter Falk in this movie, and I get to and I didn't realize I was going to appreciate it in a whole different way because of that. Because real talk, I love this movie, but I haven't seen it in a very, very long time until I just watched it for this stream. So when was the last time you watched it before just now?
In the past year.
Okay, so it was still pretty current for you.
Yeah, I don't go very long without watching this one. It's definitely one of my favorites, and it's the one that if I'm in a down mood at any point, I can turn it on, and it pretty much cheers me up immediately.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, it's funny because that's kind of, to go back a ways, that's how my love of the movie started. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I first watched it. I was either sick or I was kind of down and out about something. I don't quite remember. But I remember hearing that the movie was one that it was both good for if you were sick or it would just cheer you up in general. So that's how I came to watch it the first time and just immediately fell in love with it.
Yeah, I can't remember the first time I watched it, but it was probably sometime in 1987 or 1988 when I was, just barely turning a teenager. And no, I can't remember. It's been too long, and this movie's been with me since then. I know it was one we owned on VHS, and we probably wore it out till there was static all across the screen the way VHS tapes do. But I loved it nonetheless. I love like he's going to pinch my cheek, and he comes in and pinches his cheek, and I got something for you. You did? What is it? A book? Like, what a great response. Which leads me to my first great quote. When I was your age, television was called books. I love that. And we're going to use that someday. When I was your age, whatever thing you're watching now used to be called YouTube.
I'm sorry, but that's just depressing to think about.
Well, it happens to us all, and we lived through the change from book to VHS to Laserdisc to DVD to Blu-ray to mostly digital these days. So
some of us still Blu-ray.
Right. I know you still love your physical media, and there's something to be said for it.
Although I will say that I am in a situation like we're currently in, you really see the value in digital media because
Yeah.
entertainment is at our fingertips, and that's good for encouraging people to stay in.
Right.
But and so anybody can sit down and watch a movie like The Princess Bride and be distracted from the stuff going on in the world.
Yeah, and a healthy distraction, I think, is a wonderful thing. We're going to try to remain distracting for the next couple hours while we talk about the movie. So I kind of love the setup for this. It's the grandson and the grandfather, and the grandson clearly was looking at, he's got him his okay boomer moment with his grandpa. And he's like, he's not feeling it. And as much as I loved this movie when I was a kid, because it was a movie about sword fighting and revenge, and it was really funny at the same time. When I watched it this time, I was so struck by the growing relationship between grandson and grandfather, who, by the way, are not given names in this movie at all. They are, and in the credits, they're literally grandfather and grandson. But watching the way the relationship between them develops as he's reading him the story is kind of a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is. And I what's great about this is that I know we said we're going to stick to the movie, but in this, these sort of not bookends because they're throughout the film, but you know what I mean. The setup with the grandson and the grandfather is not part of the book. And that's a thing that was just specially made for the film, and it adds such a wonderful, heartwarming element to the overall story.
Right.
And it also makes it easier to get into if you're especially if you're younger and maybe you're in the shoes of the grandson.
Right.
It helps disarm you as a viewer to the story and get into it.
Yeah, and I just find it really great that I can relate to both the grandson and the grandfather at different points in my life, and it still seems relevant to me,
Yeah.
Okay, so then we actually open the story. The grandfather sits down and starts reading, and isn't that a wonderful opening? Yeah, it's really good. Oh, and the whole is this a kissing book? Classic line. I know I've said that to somebody somewhere before. But Westley, we know nothing. The first thing I wrote really in my notes here is we don't really know anything about Buttercup's family or her upbringing or her social class, her status, or whatever, other than she is a commoner, because Humperdinck at some point refers to her. She was once a commoner like you. But, and I kind of, I love this movie, guys. I love this movie, but Buttercup is not developed enough in the story.
See, I don't feel that way because there's a lot of stuff in this movie that is it's simple. I think that adds to an overall fairy tale quality. So,
okay,
the fact that Buttercup is this common girl that lives on this farm, we're not even aware of if she has parents, but it's it's not really important. The point of starting off the story is it's a girl and a boy falling in love, and that's about all we need to know. And it's similar later in the film. There's elements where characters all of a sudden have information that you're like, wait, how did they find that out? But because it's a fairy tale, it doesn't really matter. You just kind of go with it. And so I don't know if I would necessarily view it as a criticism. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it works fine. I think Buttercup is a wonderful female character.
She has her moments, don't get me wrong, and I actually think that's a valid argument you make there. You're right, it does, because none of them are all that well developed. Like, why does Westley love Buttercup? Why does Buttercup love Westley? That's not ever really explored, but they do, and I guess that's good enough for a fairy tale story. I want to address this question from Ramble Ron. Are we talking book as well? I haven't read the book, so I don't think John has read the book.
I have, but it was about just a little bit after I first saw the film, so it's been a while.
Yeah, so, but real talk, this is a film review, so that's what we'll be focusing on, the film, which is, it is what it is. I'm sorry that we're not talking the book if you want to, but I'm not qualified to discuss it, if I'm being perfectly honest.
And actually, but on the subject of sort of fleshed out relationships, because if you look at the movie, as far as within the confines of the movie itself, the Westley Buttercup story and all the other characters found therein, within the confines of the movie, it is literally a fairy tale. It's a storybook.
Right.
And so I think you kind of have to view the relationships through that lens.
Okay.
But look at the relationship of the grandson and the grandfather and how well that's developed. So you could view that as the relationship that we see develop in full with those little intricacies that we like. And then in the storybook, those relationships are kind of shown in broader strokes.
Okay. I think that's a good point, and I'll chew on that. Again, I still wish she had more development, but I think I can be more excusing of what I see maybe as that shortcoming, because it is a design choice, a story design choice, to keep it very simple. Because you're right, really the target audience for this is families. You want adults to enjoy it, but you want them to be able to watch it with their kids, which I have done, and it's fantastic. Okay. So it doesn't take long before we actually get into the part where we meet the three greatest side characters in the whole movie. Well, no, because there is a better side character that shows up later. Billy Crystal's Miracle Max is the best character in the movie. Sorry, just facts. But,
no. I love Billy Crystal in this, but no.
No. Okay. So, all right.
It's Inigo. I'm sorry.
Inigo? Okay.
Inigo is the best character in the movie.
That's a strong and debatable choice. So, chat, who's the best character in this movie? This ought to set off a flame war in the chat. This would be fun. I think it's Miracle Max. You think it's Inigo. Well, this is the scene where we meet Inigo and Vicini and Fezzik. And I'm going back to my quotes here. He starts talking I love the part where he starts talking about, Westley went off to seek his fortune and he was murdered by pirates. And Fred Savage is like, murdered by pirates is good. That's another thing I know I've just said to somebody for not really a great reason. Okay, I see 2 for Inigo. Kelly and Anna both think it's Inigo. Neil and Ramble Ron both say Fezzik, Andre the Giant. Inigo is great, don't get me wrong, but Miracle Max is just that movie is so good, or that character is so good. So it doesn't take long then before the three of them kidnap and take Buttercup onto their ship.
Which, by the way, I have to say, I think it's one of the most hilarious camera shots in cinema when we first see the three of them. And you just see them lined up with one another, and Vicini is really tiny, and then you have Inigo in the middle, and then Fezzik is real big. Just in the way the shot is framed, and And then Vizzini's line, "We are but poor lost circus performers."
Right.
I love it.
That very rehearsed line, "We are but poor." Yeah. It's great stuff. And Vizzini is like a fantastic, like, mustache twirling, mostly inept villain who thinks way too much of his own intellect. I love him, and I know I've said this too. Are you mad, or did the word "think" escape your lips?
It's funny because this is the part in the movie where it's funny how sometimes you watch stuff when your family's in the room, and there's things that you find absolutely hysterical, and they're like, "What are you laughing at? Is this supposed to be funny?" And the entire scene with the three of them on the boat is that for me. My mom, for a really long time, did not get the comic appeal of Wallace Shawn.
Oh man.
And so every time he's talking in like his really high pitched screaming voice, I'd just be sitting there, laughing hysterically. And she's just like, "What are you going on about?"
Right.
But I think I've worn her down now, because now when I watch the movie, she chuckles along with it. So
he's brilliant.
Yeah,
because he's ridiculous. And I think that's one thing this movie just does really well. It's got great sight gags. It's got a really sharp sense of humor and its silliness, but it never ceases to take itself and its story seriously. The stakes for Westley couldn't be higher.
Yeah. And it's interesting because this is kind of felt throughout the movie, this balance of seriousness with humor. And I'll talk a little bit about this later. The music rides that line too, because the music is, in one sense, completely hysterical, because it's in the 80s electronic score that feels just on its face ridiculous. And then you'll get these slight moments throughout the movie where the music almost takes on a dramatic note. And then, like, at the last note, it'll veer back into silliness, so that there's this fine balance of, you have these moments that you take seriously, but then not too seriously, so you still crack a smile.
Right. But it does such a great job of walking that line, which I think actually adds to your point about it being a fairy tale, because it can shift so dramatically in its tone, which maybe is the tone of the movie. Like, it's never super serious, but it takes itself seriously. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'm getting my point across, but yeah, I think it does a great job of balancing its tone. And so at this point, they set off on their ship, and maybe one of my favorite parts of the movie is the little rhyming game between Fezzik and Inigo, and it gets brought up again later in the Thieves' Forest. But like, are there rocks ahead? If there are, we'll all be dead. And then somebody brought up the "Stop it now, I mean it. Anybody want a peanut?" It's so stupid. I love it. But so they sail off, and this is how I learned what the word inconceivable means, from this movie. And I bet that's most of us here today.
Well, I mean, I didn't see the movie until early 2000s, so I'm sure I already knew the word before then. But actually, I wonder if this movie would be a good way to learn the incorrect meaning of the word. But
right. But yeah, this is the movie that, like, I'd probably heard the word before, but to like really understand what it meant, Yeah, this is the movie that did it for me, I think. A question I have: how did Wesley find them in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the night? How did he know to come looking for them? The plot hole. Plot hole.
No. Well, first of all, if you want to look at it that way, there's actually plenty of plot holes if you want to take an analytical look at it. But once again, it goes back to what I was saying before about the fact that this is a fairy tale, and you just kind of allow the film to make connections where in any other more realistic story you would, you might tear it to pieces. There's one story element, especially later on in the film, where I'll bring this up. But no, you could say that. I mean, it requires convenient timing, but you could say that Westley was already coming after Buttercup and actually managed to track where she went and knew that she had been taken. I mean, again, that requires convenient timing.
Right.
But
again, if we just make it's a fairy tale, that's fine. It's a fairy tale. I can handle that. I do think this is an important character moment for Buttercup, though, because she shows that she is willing to choose to act, even if she feels like she has no good choice. She's still willing to choose to act, to have control over her own life. She jumps overboard. So as much as I said, I wish she had a little bit more development. She's clearly shown to be brave and clearly shown to want to have control of her own destiny, which I can get behind. And this is so great because we then cut away to Peter Falk consoling Fred Savage, and he's like, "The eel doesn't get her at this time. You look worried," and he's like, "Well, maybe I was concerned."
Yeah, but my favorite reaction from him is just his initial "what?" Like when the grandfather says, "The eel doesn't get her at this time," and then he just responds, "What?" Like he's confused by why he's stopped the story.
Right.
But,
it's very cute, though.
Yeah.
But it's the first instance where we can see grandson buying in, starting to get involved and invested, and we as an audience are probably starting to get involved and invested.
Yeah.
I just got to put that up for you there, Bernie. And you are correct. It is Westley, not Wesley. There is a T in the middle.
She's just seeking to turn everybody against me again.
Never happened. We love you too much.
No.
And they come back from that, and there's this sort of reread gag. You already read that part, Grandpa.
I love it.
So, it's so cute, and he's voicing over any other characters. Lips are moving. It's kind of brilliant the way they wove these two narratives together.
Yeah.
So we get back into the story, and we find ourselves at the cliffs of insanity, and and Westley, or whoever, we know it's Westley, has been gaining on them the whole time. And another iconic line: "I wonder if he's using the same one we're using." He can't. How is he gaining on us? Maybe he's using better wind. I don't know. It's just such a silly line, silly throwaway line, which there are so many of in this movie, and I think it's the number one thing that makes it great is these characters really have a texture to them because of just the one-liners they throw out. And of course, I don't know. I'm not going to say any quote is my favorite quote, but yes, "Move the thing and that other thing." That is, I've used that quote millions of times in my life too. When something needs doing around the house, "Move the thing and that other thing." So good. And Wallace Shawn, it's just more evidence of he wants to be in control, and he's like this domineering personality type, but he really has no clue what he's doing.
Well, and it's like he thinks that he's this domineering presence, and he's so not. It's just, there could not be a person more ill-suited to that position of authority. And so when he's just screaming all these orders, it's like he's the one who, speaking of the story taking itself seriously, he takes himself way too seriously.
That's right. I love this question. Jaded Redhead, what is the thing and the other thing? Do you have any idea? If anybody can answer it, it's you. But yeah, we'll wait and see if she can answer that for us. Yeah, people are bringing up their love of Men in Tights as well. Cary Elwes played Robin Hood in Men in Tights, and I agree. That's a great movie. Mel Brooks is kind of a genius, but he's, it's even more slapstick and silly than this is. But I do love me some Men in Tights.
Yeah, because, well, I mean, obviously the difference there is he's dealing in parody in Men in Tights, and this is not a parody at all. It's a comedy, but it's not a parody. Right.
But there is kind of a hilarious exchange between Vicini and Inigo at the top of the cliff. Oh, I will say one thing. Other thing I noticed is that the wide shot of them climbing the cliffs, it's kind of funny because you can tell it's just a guy with fake people strapped to him, which I'm like, that's okay. That's okay. It's 1987.
Well, have you seen, it's kind of funny in the same way. Have you seen the Grand Budapest Hotel?
I have not seen that one.
Okay.
I know. I hear good things, but like,
there's a sequence towards the end of the film, I'm not giving any plot details away, where they're basically, skiing down a slope, and it's the most fake looking visual effects you've ever seen in the world. It's like, little dinky models and little figurines like sliding down, but it's part of the charm of the film. It's not meant to be taken seriously. So the transparency of the effect is part of the humor.
Right.
So you could almost view this in the same way.
Right.
It just adds to the charm.
Okay, I'm with you on that. I like it, but I did notice on that wide shot, I'm like, there's one effect that did not quite hold up. But I got a chuckle out of it, so still a win. Still a win.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Wesley is trying to climb up, and Inigo doesn't want to wait on him, and they can't think of anything, and he says, I swear on my...
Wait, no, you can't just jump to that. We have to talk about the exchange of the film, which is, once more, he didn't fall, inconceivable. He says,
and then,
you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
Yeah, that's another one that I've used many, many, many times.
Yeah.
Anytime somebody says inconceivable, I think you keep using that word. I don't think it means what do you think it means. I think that's a perfectly legitimate response anytime anybody uses that word inconceivable.
Yeah.
Okay, my bad. You're right. We are not glossing over that because that is one of the quotes I actually wrote down. I got quotes on one page and notes on the other, so I'm having to back and forth a little bit. Yeah. Then we get to the part where Inigo doesn't want to wait anymore. So he asks, I got rope down here, but I don't think you'd accept my help since I'm only waiting around to kill you. That does put a damper on our relationship. Another great line. But at some point he agrees, and it's when Inigo swears on his father. I swear on the life of my father, Domingo Montoya, you will reach the top alive. Throw me the rope. There is something to be said for the mention of Inigo's father is what motivates Westley. And I did spend some time thinking about why that would be from Wesley's point of view. We don't know that Westley has a close relationship with his father at all. You know? But I think it does show that a father-son connection is not that far from a grandfather-grandson connection, which I think might be the real pivotal relationship in this film.
That's interesting. I always took it as Westley can sort of read in Inigo that it's not even that a father-son relationship might be important to him, but he can see into Inigo that relationship was important to him by the way he speaks. And so that convinces him enough that he is willing to take him at his word. I think the way Inigo just delivers that, or Inigo, but the way Mandy Patinkin delivers the line, there's such sincerity behind it. And so I think that's what encourages Westley to go ahead and trust it. But yeah, it is interesting thinking about the film on a larger scope. You could definitely read into it that it's a sort of talking about relationships between fathers and sons, even grandfathers and grandsons. I have to admit, I didn't quite look at it through that lens before. That's interesting.
Well, I think it bears mentioning at least when it comes up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I also love that Westley gets to the top and then it goes like, no, take your time, shake the gigantic rocks out of your boots, and gigantic rocks, y'all. Like, I don't know how he had his boot on with those rocks in there. It's kind of hilarious how big they are. But yeah.
And I mean, in this,
I'm not sure what you're asking. Why do I Avatar getaway crown? I'm not sure what you're asking. Did I finally become the king of the North? I mean, I'm just going to go with yes. Oh, why does my avatar get a crown? I don't know, because I'm the king of the North. Okay, I don't know how to change names. Says The Princess Bride novel is about father and son relationships, and the movie changes it to the grandfather-grandson, which I think works for the movie.
Yeah.
Very, very well. This is also where we hear the story of the six-fingered man from Inigo, and
which, I mean, for me, is one of the greatest scenes in cinema. Like,
it's a nice little monologue he's got there, and and Mandy Patinkin delivers it with real heartfelt emotion behind it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because this is the first time I remember ever seeing Mandy Patinkin in anything.
Me too.
And it's just interesting going on to watch his other work after seeing this, because I'm always thinking of Inigo. But yeah, the monologue is, again, it's one of those moments, cinematic moments that I've never forgotten, and it's one of the best. Just once again, the movie dips into this moment of seriousness. You know, it takes a moment out from, you know, ridiculousness, and you get this very authentic moment. But then, of course, it dips back out when Westley says, and you've done nothing but study swordplay. And he says, more pursued than studied lately. It's been 20 years now. And
right.
I'm starting to lose confidence. But
yeah, it's great stuff. And it leads to a really great action scene. This sword fight between the two of them that starts off left-handed and progresses all over the place. And this was the scene that really made me notice the music as well in this film, because a lot of the hits are timed perfectly with the clashes of swords, with the movements on the ground. I love it when he does his like trapeze act for a second. There's like a drum roll going. It's really silly, but like it fits the style, and it heightens the drama of the action we're seeing a little bit. So I really noticed the music for the first time in this action sequence, and thought it was really great. And the sword fight itself, I mean, it's obviously like choreographed stage fighting, but it's really well executed by the two of them.
And what I really like about the sword fight is it's very classically staged. Yeah, that's right, Bernie. And
yeah, you can match us. Get your San Rixian t-shirt at the link that Bernie just provided in the chat, and you can look great like us with this beautiful decapitated wolf head filled with arrows that says the North remembers.
But what's great about it is it reminds you of like an old Errol Flynn sword fights, and you don't really see stuff like this in modern cinema. And I'm not saying that the stuff done in modern cinema is badly done, but it's just we've moved on to a different style where something like this would be done with, a shaky cam kind of in there with. I mean, just look at sword fights like we saw in Game of Thrones, where you're sort of in there in the thick of it with the different fighters, versus something like this that sort of takes a step back. The cameras are steady, and you've got beautiful choreography and all that stuff. So it's very beautifully shot, and I wouldn't say I prefer one over the other, but it is kind of beautiful to see something like this that feels like it's from a bygone era almost.
Yeah, it does. It does. You're right. If it was today, it would be kung fu and wushu fighting, and that's fine. I enjoy that too. But there is something like it just adds to the overall tone that this movie is going for. It feels like something from a different time.
Yeah.
I love how the fight starts with, "You seem a decent fellow. I hate to kill you. You seem a decent fellow. I hate to die." I mean, that's another great line from this movie. And it starts into this really ridiculous sword fight that starts out left-handed. And then, of course, there's that whole "I am not left-handed" moment. Oh, excuse me. And then leads to the "I'm also not left-handed."
You mentioned the music earlier, and I do love I mean, I don't know. I guess it's not the music; it's more of a sound effect when Wesley throws his sword down, and it's like this boom, goes into the ground. But it kind of goes with the music in terms of this sort of silly electronic stuff. But again, it's also highlighting the action and the drama at the same time, like you said.
Yeah, I noticed that myself. One thing that I do know is that they're having this conversation and they're fighting with each other. They're like, I see you're using Barrett's defense against me. Well, appropriate, don't you think, using the rocky terrain? But then you're expected to counter with this other fencing style, and then unless you've studied this style, which I have, and I love it because they're not actually doing those maneuvers when they say them. I know because I watched a video about the sword fight some time ago, but those are real fencing masters that would have taught people. So, like, at least the words that they're saying, along with their really well choreographed fight sequence, overall, it's really quite a fantastic moment.
Yeah, what I love about it is you get a lot of great character interaction throughout the fight too. because you can see their sort of evolving respect for one another as the fight progresses, and of course it ends with where Westley doesn't want to kill him, so he settles for knocking him out,
Right.
And finishes off by saying how he holds him in the highest respect.
Please understand, I hold you in the highest respect. Right after he clunks him over the head.
Yeah. But of course, we get to his next confrontation with Fezzik, otherwise known as the fight where you might not understand half of what Andre is saying.
Right. Andre has a really, really thick accent.
And what's interesting about this whole scene is that if you watch the behind the scenes stuff, it's interesting the number of things that they went through to pull off this fight between the two of them, because Andre was having, like very serious back issues, and he couldn't do this stuff. So a lot of times you're seeing a double for him, and then moments like where Westley is supposed to be sort of holding onto his neck and hanging off him, he's actually got his feet on the ground. It just looks like he's up and being lifted up off the ground because of the way they shot it, so as not to put pressure on Andre. So from a behind the scenes perspective, it's really interesting how they put that fight together.
So you're talking about a scene where you put down your rock and I'll put down my sword and we'll try to kill each other like civilized people? Yeah. Great fight. And you're right. They did have to go through a lot of like camera angle hoops, because you're right. I've also heard from basically every interview about it I've ever seen that Andre's health was failing him at that point. Not just his general health, but especially his difficulties with his back.
And at the end of the film too, when Buttercup falls into his arms, she was even being held by strings.
Yeah, in a harness. Yeah.
So yeah, but it's a phenomenal scene, and I think both of them are really quite humorous. But it's funny, I mentioned the whole thing with not being able to understand some of what Andre says, because I'm actually kind of speaking through my dad when I say that, because I remember one time we were watching the movie and I was getting the dialogue because I'd seen the movie a couple times, and we're sitting there watching it and he's like, you can't understand what he's saying. But yeah, captions are your friend if you have difficulty.
Yes, they are, very much so. I mean, and even Mandy Patinkin's Spanish accent can be difficult to understand sometimes, but yeah, Andre's difficult to understand. I mean, there's no way around it. Sometimes he is.
Yeah, but he's such a lovable guy, and I mean, I just love it every time I watch this film because he's such a warm presence.
Yeah, he really is. Like, he's this giant man, but he's so gentle.
Yeah.
Paydar once, not sure if it was touched on, but the Cliffs of Insanity are the Cliffs of Moher here in Ireland. I did not know that, so I'm glad you stopped by, Paydar, to share that information with us. That's cool. I never knew where they were. I knew they had to be somewhere. Cool.
Well, that's interesting, because I wonder what. I'd be interested to find out which parts were location shots, and because I know there's a good deal of it that's done on sound stages, and then there's probably some what do you call it, matte paintings and things of that nature. So if they actually used cliffs for the scene, I wonder what shots use those. It'd be nice to read a behind the scenes book on it or something.
It really would.
I wonder if because they've got behind the scenes books for so many films, and I wonder if they do have something for this. That would be interesting to.
I bet there probably is. This movie is so popular. Somebody's written a book about it. I promise you.
Yeah.
So we'll move on from the wrestling match with Andre the Giant. This is the first time we see Humperdinck on the hunt after them. A brief scene where he plays out the sword fight and figures out where he's going.
By the way,
Humperdinck is actually a decent tracker, if nothing else.
By the way, just mention the ludicrousness of in the names in the story, like Humperdinck and Buttercup.
Mm-hmm.
I think there isn't a time that goes by where if my mom's in the room while I'm watching this, she cracks up in the beginning of the film when Humperdinck says, "May I present to you the Princess Buttercup?"
Yes. Yes, I agree completely. That's like, you can't sound regal with that name.
But so anyway, so we see that, and then comes the scene between Westley and Vizzini.
Yeah, Westley, Vizzini, and the iocane powder.
Which, just how many great lines are packed into this one scene?
A lot of them. A lot of them. Is this the funniest scene in the movie? I don't know, but it's up there. And this movie is hilarious from front to back. But this particular scene, I clearly can't choose the wine in front of you. I clearly can't choose the wine in front of me. Just, and his delivery and his like haughty nature of looking down his nose at Westley because he's like, "You're too stupid," and then like at the end just switches the cups because he's truly an idiot. What in the world is that? I've said that many times too, especially if I'm like being silly trying to distract someone. What in the world?
I do think my favorite line might be, "You're that smart, are you?" Well, let me tell you, you ever heard of Aristotle, Socrates? Yes, morons.
Right. Yeah. Like, he's really got a big, high impression of himself, and nothing he does in the movie actually supports it. Yeah. You know, when you look closely, he's like, he screws up everything he tries, and he just is viciously mocking of everyone around him. Do you want me to send you back to where I found you, unemployed in Greenland? I mean, and he's such a jerk while he's doing it. I love Wallace Shawn's portrayal of Vizzini in this movie. It's so good. Oh yeah, there's a quote for you.
Wait till I get going.
Australia. There's also that, "So you've made your decision in?" "Not remotely." And maybe Vizzini's best line to me is, "You fell victim to one of the classic blunders. The most famous is never get involved in a land war in Asia. But only slightly well known is this: never go in against a Sicilian when death is on the line." That stupid laugh of his, followed by the best death in cinematic history, where he just stops mid-laugh and falls over sideways without his face changing at all. And I love that moment when it's so stupid and so ridiculous that it gets me every time. I was like shedding tears laughing at it when I was watching it earlier today. I got to admit, I rewound it about 3 times or 4 times so I could watch it over and over, because it just maybe that's stupid for me to like it that much, but I don't care. I do anyway.
It's just almost as if, all his line deliveries weren't ridiculous enough. It's that really silly way that he just stops and then rolls over.
Mm-hmm. It's just fantastic. And again, that's not like you would never see that anywhere else. It's a movie that continue, and it's not. It's laughable and it's played for laughs, but like the movie still takes it seriously in the moment. It's just it's so good. And then at this point, Wesley, who is still disguised as the Dread Pirate Roberts, or the Man in Black, as he's sometimes called, takes Buttercup and runs, and Humperdinck is continuing to chase him, figures out that he's defeated a giant, and then the movie actually slows down a little bit. So I think that's like the end of Act 1, moving into Act 2, we start to get...
And what can I just say also how hilarious Humperdinck's like observations are? Just
Humperdinck's observations?
Yeah, just the way the movie keeps cutting back to him, and then all of a sudden he's like, someone has beaten a giant. It's just this ridiculous.
Right? Well, who could tell because he looked at the dirt.
Yeah. But yeah, and then we go into Buttercup talking with the Man in Black. But it's at some point here she figures out that it's the Dread Pirate Roberts.
Right. Yeah, and we do get Wesley's backstory, although sort of like it's the Dread Pirate Roberts telling Buttercup. But, good on Buttercup for sniffing out who he was. Again, I don't know that she gets a whole lot of development, but I don't know that she doesn't. Maybe she gets more than I'm giving her credit for, because a lot of her scenes, while they're not like talking about her backstory or anything, they are showing her to be a person who speaks her mind, who stands up for what she believes in, who seems kind of sad and resigned to her fate in a lot of ways because she thinks Wesley's dead, but
as a matter of fact, the only criticism that I guess if I was looking at it through a modern lens, a criticism that I would have would be that after she discovers that it's actually Westley, she doesn't give him crap for, sort of toying with her for the past 30 minutes. Not 30 minutes in the movie, but, assuming that's
right.
how long they've been running, because, it is kind of a dick move on his part. But he is trying to ascertain exactly, whether she willingly, decided to marry Humperdinck or not. But, I think she still probably should have given him crap for putting on the charade. But again, this is a movie from the 80s, so I'm not super critical about it. But yeah, if I had one criticism, that would probably be it. But I think as far as her development, she gets quite a bit of it, and she is shown to have courage. And
yeah, I agree. To the point of pushing the Dread Pirate Roberts down a hill.
Yeah. Which, again, another one of the funniest parts, just where then she proceeds to throw herself down the hill, and it's just followed by them going, ooh, ooh, ooh.
Right. Yeah, that ADR that they laid over that tumble down the hill is kind of hilarious because of how detached it is from the rest of the scene. You're right. It's pretty funny. I noticed that myself. You will also get one of a great Westley line that I've used before. Life is pain, Highness. Anyone that tells you otherwise is selling something. And I don't know. That's not a feel-good quote, but, I think it stings a little bit because it's true. Maybe not life is pain, but life isn't fair, Which, like, we have this whole life isn't fair thing coming up. And that exchange between grandfather and grandson is fantastic. So I don't want to bury the lead there. But, yeah. And then, like, they get to the bottom of the hill. And then they're about to kiss. And, of course, the grandson wants nothing to do with that. He doesn't want to read the kissing scene. which I find to be sweet and funny that he doesn't want to. And the grandfather, like obliges him. We'll skip the kissing part. We'll skip to the fire swamp because the fire.
All right, you're sick, so I'll humor you.
Say that again.
He says, "You're sick, so I'll humor you."
Yeah. And so Westley and Buttercup head off to the fire swamp, and we'll never survive. Nonsense. You only say that because no one ever has. Which is another great line, But we get into the fire swamp here. And I thought, it's clearly on a soundstage, but they did a really good job of making a creepy forest.
Yeah.
With the mists and the vines hanging and the old looking trees. And I actually, that was one of my notes was, they did a really good job on that set.
Well, isn't it really refreshing to just this entire movie? You see all of these scenes on whether they're on location or sound stages with these elaborate sets, and it really is kind of a breath of fresh air. After all these years of movies with all these heavy visual effects shots with CG backgrounds and all that stuff. I mean, this isn't meant to be a tirade on
Oh no,
on the evils of modern visual effects or anything, but it is nice to revisit a movie before we had all that stuff, and we get to see things done in a more naturalistic way as this movie is.
right.
But yeah, the fire swamp is great because it starts off, we get more backstory
Mm-hmm.
what Westley went through. And actually, I will say that as far as my earlier criticism goes, it does cut to this scene where they're in the fire swamp. So maybe she's already let him have it before we join into this scene.
Yeah, and like there is a missing scene here where she's like, "Why did you lie to me about being who you really are?" And and like it makes sense. She went off to marry someone else, and he wanted to know what her real intentions were. And once he found out, okay, he dropped it. But you're right. That's I could do with that scene in the movie.
Yeah, but see, now that I've realized that there's a cut, I can imagine that scene taking place. So now I'm cool with it.
Right.
But and then of course, and the ridiculousness of the ROUSs.
Rodents of unusual size? I don't think they exist.
What's great is we don't hear about them until after we see one for the first time. It's like, because we see the first one when he dives in to save her.
Yep.
In the quicksand, and just randomly we see this giant rat just walking through the forest, and then he exits. It's like, what the hell was that?
And then they climb out and they're hugging, and there's two, and Westley looks at them, and then later in the same scene says he doesn't think they exist. That's another great part of it. Like, you've literally seen them seconds ago.
Oh, he's trying to not freak out.
Right.
So
yeah, I thought that was.
And of course, yeah, the comic timing of saying that line and then one jumps on him immediately. And this, again, what I was saying before about the music, what's interesting is when the fight is nearing its close, and as Westley is stabbing the rodent, and the music gets dramatic for a second. It's like, oh wow. And what's funny is it's such a ridiculous scene, but the music adds dramatic weight to it.
You're right, but I also feel like was he a little bit cruel to that poor rat, or was he putting it out of its misery? But if he was putting it out of its misery, like, he wasn't very clean about it.
The thing had just been trying to eat him.
Yeah,
and bit into his shoulder and everything. So I don't know. I think I draw the line at being sympathetic towards a giant rat that's trying to devour me.
Okay, fair enough. I also wrote down here, I wish Buttercup was more capable and more developed. But like, I guess I'm already eating my words a little bit on not being developed enough, and her not being capable is probably just she can't fight a rodent of unusual size. But again, when we meet up with Humperdinck and Westley is choosing death over letting her go, she again exercises her will to find a solution.
Yeah, and that's, I think that's definitely a very strong moment for her, just because she's using her wits in that moment where Westley is just going all in with violence, and he's going to try and fight his way out, but that's not the way out of that situation. Unfortunately, she doesn't count on just how devious Humperdinck actually is.
Right. She got hoodwinked by him a little bit.
Yeah, but that's not really her fault. It's not like she doesn't know that he's planning to have her murdered.
Right.
So there's no reason for her to necessarily suspect that if she makes this deal, that
right.
he would hold up his end.
No, she didn't really know him.
Yeah.
So yeah. Hold on. What does this note say? Sorry, sometimes I can't read my own handwriting. We then cut to the pit of despair and the hilarious albino character. The pit of despair. The pit of despair. Don't you dare think of trying to escape. Like, he goes from raspy voice to almost sexy voice. It's really good. Really good stuff.
Well, it's playing off of cliches of these types of stories where you expect this creepy, underground guy to have a raspy voice.
Right.
It's great. I just wanted to stop you real quick. Did you have to do the mid-roll?
Oh, good call.
It is 10 after 7.
We're just going off on this movie, and I'm having such a good time. You're right. Mid-roll. Okay, folks. So this is the time when I finally remember to say, hey, hit the like button and subscribe, because if I don't do it now, I just forget to do it altogether. I think most of you here are probably already subscribed, but to anybody that comes along to watch this later, and this is a popular movie, so you never know. Yeah, we do nerd stuff all the time. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like on the video if you are enjoying yourself. I'd appreciate it. I also got a shout out, ridiculous Ed Tollett, #1 patron in the land. Ed, you're my man. Our links to our Patreon, our social media is down in the description below. So yeah, follow us on Twitter. I just hit 900 followers on Twitter. I'm getting to be big time. I want to hit that 1,000. I want to hit that 1,000. It's just a number. It doesn't really mean anything, but still, it means something to me. Yeah, so follow us there. And next,
I'm creeping ever so slowly towards that 200 number that I'm trying to get.
We also haven't been doing the Twitter thing very much for very long.
Yeah.
I've been at it for a couple years longer than you. But yeah, so follow John, follow Nessie, who's not here right now, but she'll be back next week. Follow me and follow the Here Be Dragons YouTube channel Twitter page, because we post stuff there as well. The link to John's blog is down there. You written anything lately?
Not lately, especially not the past week. I guess I should go ahead and mention figures now that Stephen and Nessie have been recovering. I've been a little bit sick over the past week. Nothing too bad, but just enough to keep me laying in bed. But I did want to mention that this week, because we were supposed to do it last week and it got postponed. This week I'll be doing my next discussion with Helen over at the Clueless Fangirl. We're going to be talking about the J.R.R. Tolkien book, The Fall of Gondolin. And so you guys can look for that probably on Thursday or Friday.
Right on. So what else is we need to do in the mid-roll? Next week we are doing a deep dive on a single episode of The Watchmen. It will be Watchmen, I believe it's episode 6, and it's titled
This Extraordinary Being.
This Extraordinary Being. And it's the one where Angela takes the nostalgia drug and has the flashback to her grandfather's life, Will Reeves, and it's really good. And as of right now, we have 2 special guests going to appear. So it'll be me and John. Our co-host Nessie will be back, and we're also going to be having Stan Rixian and Alicia Kingston join us for that conversation. Sanri is a huge Watchmen fan, and she knows all about it, so she's going to be here to share her knowledge. And Alicia Kingston, let's be honest, I'm a white guy. I don't have the proper lens to do justice to the episode and the themes that it's exploring. So I reached out to a lady of color who will be here to bless us with her different life experience, and we'll be able to comment in ways that we just can't. And so I'm really looking forward to that. Alicia Kingston is a fine lady, a fine content creator, and she's been at it for a long time. You should go subscribe to her channel if you haven't already. But yeah, she'll be here next week.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive into that. That's probably my favorite episode of the season, and I actually think it's probably one of the best hours of television I've ever seen. So
it's really good, and I'm glad we're doing it. The week after that, I believe, is the Picard finale. And then the week after that is a deep dive on an Expanse character that has not been decided yet. So, if you have a preference as to which character we would do, feel free to let us know. Although we'll probably post an official poll on Twitter on the channel Twitter handle. So, go subscribe to the Here Be Dragons YouTube Twitter account. Here it's at Here Be Dragons YT, and we'll post that probably. I might even do it this afternoon just so we can know who we're thinking about after we're done with this stream.
You're gonna see me creating like 50 ghost accounts to get my vote. Just kidding.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
But you'll never know.
Right. So I guess that's it for the mid-roll. I can't think of anything else. Yeah. So going back to The Princess Bride. Where are we at? Went through the fire swamp. Okay. So Buttercup at this point in the movie has a dream. We don't know it's a dream. It's like Buttercup greeted her people again, this time as their queen. And of course, the grandson interrupts, and he's like, "You're reading it wrong. You're messing it up." And he's getting all upset. And he's like, just convinced, Westley has to kill, has to kill Humperdinck.
And then this leads to the best exchange between the grandfather and the grandson.
Yeah, we'll get there.
See, I told you she'd never marry that awful Humperdinck. Yes, you're very smart. Shut up.
Yeah, I love that line too. Yes, you're very smart. Shut up. But also we have this, well, who says life is fair? Where is that written? Life isn't always fair. And that's a true line that stuck with me as a kid, even when I watched it the first time, life isn't fair. Because I know that's not fair is a thing I said plenty of times as a kid.
Yeah.
But like, I just love how upset he is at this point. So at this point, he's bought in. He's like, she's not supposed to marry him. She's supposed to marry Westley. It's not fair. I don't like where this story is going. But it's they're having that bonding moment, that shared experience. Because clearly the grandfather loves the story, or it's not one he'd bring to read to his grandson.
Yeah.
I see you, Anna. Watch The Dark Crystal. I keep insisting every stream. Okay, I have taken notice that you have stated your desires once again. I've pretty much resigned myself to when I can find the right time to fit it in. It will probably be at least after Ice and Fire Con, if Ice and Fire Con still goes. So yes, we will get to the Dark Crystal.
Hey, if everybody's under quarantine, you'll have all the time in the world.
Yeah, you're right. Well, and to be in real talk, I just lost. They canceled 3 of my work days this week. So I literally have, I think I'm down to 1 day of work this week. And I'm an hourly employee, y'all, so pray for me. But yeah, so maybe I'll get to it this week. You never know. So at that point, Humperdinck and Buttercup make a deal about 4 letters and 4 fastest ships, and you know, she continues to go along with it, although I think she doesn't really trust Humperdinck very much at this point. And she shouldn't, because immediately after that, Humperdinck is having a discussion with Count Rugen, and he pretty much reveals his plans.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is where we find out that he's planning, or that he's already tried to have her killed, and
right.
His new plan is going to be to kill himself on his wedding night, which, if you look at this, it's a bit of a downgrade of a plan, isn't it? He thinks it's better, but I have to question that, because his first plan was to have these 3 guys kidnap her and kill her, where his hands would be clean. His new plan is to strangle her himself on the wedding night, and it's like, nobody's going to suspect that.
Well, he's also initiating this narrative of Gilder spies are coming to kill her.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, like, he's like, it'll just be so much more satisfying to do it myself. So, yeah, it's easy to hate both Humperdinck and Count Rugen.
Yeah, it's when they have that exchange of, if you haven't got your health, you haven't got anything.
Mm-hmm. Like, they're still engaging each other like they're friends and like they care, and giving genuine, like, oh, thanks, buddy, type advice. But I'm going to get, but you have a, go murder your wife, but get some rest. But, go murder your wife. I'm going to go torture this guy. And
I love that Count Rugen's name apparently is Tyrone.
Tyrone, yeah.
It's like, what?
But, yeah. So, oh, did I skip a page? I did. Oh, no, I didn't. The machine is activated for the first time. And I love his calm and even tone as he's like talking about this horrible device he's invented to suck the life out of you. And it was just, Cary Elwes can really sell that too, that pain that he was in. So I appreciated that a lot. We also, this is where we get Humperdinck brings in his castle in Yellen and tells him to clear the thieves' forest, and this is where we get that tidbit about, Gilder spies are planning to murder my wife on our wedding night.
I have heard no such news. And then Humperdinck comes back with, she will not be murdered. So he's keeping up this ruse even with his underling.
I'm sorry. I really like this. I don't know how to change names. Do you get the impression that they are a couple? 2020 me wonders if they are coded as gay. I never thought of it that way, but I don't see why they couldn't be, other than most of the gay people I've ever met have been wonderful people, and I don't necessarily want to code the bad guys as a gay couple. You know what I mean? But they certainly could be. So if that's your headcanon, I say go for it.
yeah, I'm always in support of if it's not refuted on screen, then go with it.
Right.
For your personal headcanon.
So he tells Yellen to clear the thieves' forest, and of course, he then talks to Buttercup about the plans and lets slip that maybe he didn't send the 4 fastest ships, and she calls him on his BS.
But she's confident anyway. She's like, Westley will come for me anyway. So.
Yep.
And then he races down, and he has this, really funny in the speech where it's like, you two really loved each other, so you might have been truly happy together. And no couple in a century has that chance, no matter what the storybooks say. And so I think no one in a century shall suffer so much as you. And then he yanks the thing all the way up, and Rudin's like, not to 50.
Right.
But then he's very interested to see what happens. He gets that evil look on his face, or he's like, okay, I wouldn't have done that, but now I'm interested to see what it actually does to him.
Yeah. So, yeah. Then we flash forward to the wedding day at that point. So the wedding day, actually, the entire back half of the movie just takes place on that one day. But so from the wedding, though, we see the return, because they're trying to clear the thieves' forest. We see the return of Inigo and Fezzik, and Inigo is drunk as a skunk.
You don't look so good. You don't smell so good either. Maybe not, but I feel fine. See, this is what I'm talking about. I love his character so much. It's I'm not gonna, get on your case much. If you think Miracle Max is the best character in the film, that's fine. But I love Mandy Patinkin's line deliveries, and just the fact that his story is so emotional as well.
Right.
And, I mean, this, the central story and the love story, but I actually think the heart of the film is Inigo and his quest to avenge his father. To me, it's the most emotionally compelling part of the film. So I guess that's why I feel that way. And I love and this is what I was talking about earlier with plot convenience, where they decide that they need the Man in Black, because Inigo says he must have defeated Vizzini, so he's the man that I need for to help me come up with a plan to get my revenge. And so they start heading off, and they hear the cries of Westley, who's, the machine has just been put up to 50. And so then he says, and do you hear that sound, Fezzik? That is the sound of ultimate suffering. I made it when Rudin slaughtered my father. This is, and the Man in Black makes it now. His true love is marrying another. So who else has the cause for ultimate suffering? But it's like, how does he know the details of the fact that Buttercup is the Man in Black's true love and all that stuff? But once again, it goes under the umbrella of this is a fairy tale. So characters have relevant plot information when they need to have. So that's something that I'm completely fine with. But I remember noticing it the very first time I saw the movie. I was like, wait, how did he figure? What? And but it's just one of those things that you just kind of go with. And I think once again, it works because the story is essentially coming out of it's a fairy tale storybook. So it works.
Right. and then they follow the scream to its source, and they find the albino and Fezzik jog his memory. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jog his memory so hard, or I didn't mean to jog him so hard.
And this again, and then at this point, Inigo gets down on one knee and is essentially praying to his father, asking for guidance. And and it has a lot of emotional resonance. You really feel for this, and when he thinks that he's not being answered, or it's going to come to nothing, you can see the despair on his face. And then, of course, he puts his arm up on the tree and leans over, and that's the knot in the tree that opens up and leads them to exactly where they have to go.
Which is another great sight gag.
Yeah.
I want to go ahead and answer Lady Starfall's question. Do you think they could do justice in a remake of this film? And she's just curious about our thoughts. Do I think I don't know who they is, would do justice to a remake of this film? Could it happen? Of course, it can always happen. It was made once. It was made great once. It could be made great again. But I don't think it needs to be, because one thing that I kind of came away with was that I don't know that I'd change anything about this movie. Even here we are 33 years after it came out. I love it just the way it is. Yeah, we've had little nitpicks along the way, but like a remake, I don't know that it's needed. Could they remake it? Sure, they could. Would I love if they announce a remake? Am I going to fan cast it in my head? Yes, I am. But yeah, I don't think I would. I don't think it's one that should be remade. Like, you wouldn't remake any. Yeah, no. So no. Long answer. If they do, I would watch it anyway.
I'll answer that by first saying that I would not be surprised in the least bit if it gets remade, because they'll remake anything these days. And I absolutely do not think that they should remake it at all, and I would never watch it. Ever.
I can't say I would never watch it.
That's fine. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Yeah, it's one of those that it's, you said we have nitpicks, and yeah, I might have made one or two observations that, looking through a modern lens, I could nitpick, but honestly, I love every single frame of this film, and I honestly wouldn't change a thing, and I don't want to see them even attempt to remake it, because not only is it just absolutely perfect, I think it's a quintessentially 80s film as well. And I think you'd lose something by trying to do a modern take on it. And I don't know, it's like, do something else. If you want a more recent modern fairy tale in the same vein, watch a movie from the previous decade. It's called Stardust.
Yeah, Stardust.
That's a great movie too.
Stardust is great. I haven't seen it in a long, long time either.
Yeah, if you wanted a to do a modern fairy tale, find something else. Make something new and fresh. Leave this alone. It's a wonderful film. There's absolutely no reason why people can't discover it and love it. You don't need to.
Here's what I want. What I want, if they remake it, is to gender swap the two lead roles. Give me a Dread Pirate Roberta who comes to save a guy named Buttercup. That's what I'll give me that. I'll take it.
But again, I mean, I need more of a reason for them to remake it than just, let's gender swap to gender swap it.
I would still watch it. The Prince Bride, the Prince husband. That would be funny.
I don't know. I think the last remake that I watched was the Disney Beauty and the Beast, and that's because I love Beauty and the Beast that much that I was kind of curious, and I think for what it was, they did a good job, but I actually have not watched any of the other Disney remakes since then, and just modern remakes in general, I'm not supportive of, so I don't know. I'm just not on board, but anybody who would be, more power to you. But yeah, I'd like to see something new and different.
So there you have it. None of us are overly ecstatic about the idea, and like there was a tweet going around some months ago. It was like, what movie is a perfect movie? And my answer is there is no such thing as a perfect movie. No movie is perfect, but this movie is as close as it gets.
Amadeus is perfect.
Okay, whatever. We're not here to debate the benefits and shortcomings of Amadeus, but
well, that would be easy because there are no shortcomings.
There is no such thing as a perfect movie, and I stand by that.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. They finally find the Man in Black and they take him to Miracle Max. And again, my favorite character in the movie, Miracle Max. You and JP are about to get in it over this. If this movie had a real soundtrack, it might be perfect. JP is a friend of mine, an IRL friend who is a musician. JP, maybe you don't know this, but John is a huge lover of movie soundtracks. So I want to hear because I already said I enjoyed the movie, but the music in the movie, but it's very tied to making the dramatic scenes more dramatic, to making the fun scenes more fun.
Well, I don't know. I guess, is he talking about the fact that it's an electronic score over a traditional orchestral score? Because if he is, I mean, I vastly prefer orchestral scores. They're my favorite kind, but when something works, it works. And the score they went with for this film is perfectly suited to the movie. So I don't know. I don't think the film would necessarily be better if it had a more classical style score. I think they went with what fit the tone of the film. That's my opinion. Take it or leave it. But
you better take it. Okay.
Having said that, I do think that we could have a whole topic on this with me just going on and on about music. But I think that today a lot of films rely overly much on some of the issues are an overuse of electronics, but mostly it's an overuse of temp tracks, which basically music that they stick into films while they're editing. And there's a lot of unimaginative music that gets put out because of that. But I say electronic or orchestral, if it's a good score, it's a good score. And I think The Princess Bride is a very good score.
Okay, so there you have it. I'm glad we covered that, though. But we're in the Miracle Max now, and he has the best quotes in the movie. He's my favorite character in this movie. He's so funny. I did kind of like come away going, he's kind of a racist stereotype of a Brooklyn Jew, but Billy Crystal is a Brooklyn Jew, so I can
I never got that impression. It felt like it was Billy Crystal doing Billy Crystal, which was just so fun. So I don't know, and maybe I was looking at it through maybe naive eyes, and maybe it's because at that point in my life, maybe I wasn't focused on the issues like, representation on film and what maybe
Again, it's a fairy tale. It's silly. Billy Crystal is playing himself more or less, though. So.
Yeah, and I think that's
why I wanted to mention that I had the thought, but I don't think we need to dwell on it.
It's like, because the moment he opens his mouth, you're like, oh, it's Billy Crystal.
Right.
So I don't know. It's kind of like seeing Billy Crystal and Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet too. It's like he can't escape being himself. So and yeah, Carol Kane is fantastic too.
Liar. Very good stuff. Like Miracle Max, though, to me just has all the best quotes. This king's stinking son fired me. Thanks for bringing up such a painful memory. While you're at it, why don't you give me a nice paper cut and pour your lemon juice on it? He's just so salty about everything. He's so grumpy. Beat it or I'll call the Brute Squad. Oh, I'm on the Brute Squad. You are the Brute Squad. It's just he's got those zingers, man. One night I know I've said to people when somebody's like, hurry up, I'm like, don't rush me, Sonny. You rush a miracle man, you get rotten miracles. And then his last, I'm not going to read every quote he's got. There's so many great ones, but like the whole have fun storming the castle. You think they'll make it? It'll take a miracle. Just, I don't know how, I've lost track of how many times I've told my mother or my mother has told me when we're leaving the house, have fun storming the castle. And we even try to do that bad Brooklyn accent. We're Texans, so we don't necessarily succeed very well, but we try.
I love when he lifts up Wesley's arm and lets it drop, and he says, I've seen worse.
Right. Ooh, look who knows so much. Turns out your friend here is only mostly dead. Yeah, it's just, it's so funny, and like the chocolate coating helps it go down easier. Of course, that's a Carol Kane line, but still, just the whole sequence with Miracle Max's hut, cabin, whatever you want to call it. Just, I love it. Takes the bellows to push air into his lungs so he can push on his chest, and I don't even know how to describe that, but like I'm putting tears in my eyes right now. It's so stupid, and clearly, okay. For those that know me best, know that I do really love absurdist humor, and a lot of the humor in this movie is quite absurd while taking itself very seriously, and that's just hilarious to me. And this is where we learn that true love is the greatest thing in the world, except for a nice MLT. Mutton, lettuce, and tomato sandwich where the mutton is nice and lean and the tomatoes are ripe. They're so perky. I love that. I'm going to stop quoting Miracle Max. We just need to move on from Miracle Max. But
what's so great about this is, and the fact that he's your favorite character in the film, it's one scene in the film. And that's what's so great. Both of them do such a fantastic job that, the scene lasts, a couple minutes, and at most it's not very long. And you just can't forget them. They're wonderful characters.
They really are. But I think the end of Miracle Max kind of moves us towards the third act and the end of the movie. Because we cut from Miracle Max to exterior castle wall overlooking the gate, guarded by 60 men. And you get that great, you've been mostly dead all day line from Andre the Giant. And it's just, we're getting into the real meat of the, or towards the like emotional climax of the movie. And it's done a really great job of not only taking us there, but again, I keep coming back to the grandson and the grandfather, because Peter Falk's voiceover is sprinkled in here and there, and it just reminds us that ultimately, as much as we're enjoying the story is being told so that a grandfather can bond with his grandson and make his grandson feel better and relive his own glory, or not glory, but his own love of the story from when he was ostensibly a child. So yeah, this movie does everything right to me. Also, let me explain. No, there's too much. Let me sum up. This is these little, like, it's almost a throwaway line, but it's just so funny.
It's absurd the number of wonderful lines in this film, because I mean, the stream has essentially been us just going
Quoting
through the
the movie.
quoting,
Quoting and saying, "Oh, I like that part," and then quoting something else.
Yeah, it's just so wonderful. And I love the fact that when they stick the pill in his mouth, it disappears. It's like you don't even see him swallow it. It just apparently dissolves into his mouth, and he's instantly awake. I love it.
Yeah, I agree.
And then
and it's the wedding day at this point.
Yeah, and Fezzik apparently just took absolutely everything they could possibly need from Miracle Max's.
Right, he's got the Holocaust cloak, which is, you know, I guess it's just the outside burns, but the inside doesn't, you know. But yeah, but one thing I will say is, even up to this point, Buttercup professes that she's still like, Wesley's coming. She still believes. And it's nice to think of somebody who would have that much faith in you as a person. It would be nice to have somebody like that. Most of us do not have someone that just believes we're going to come through no matter what. Well, that's probably because most of us won't always come through no matter what, but I digress. So we then cut to the night scene and the Dread Pirate Roberts attack. And of course, this is where maybe the wedding itself, man, this guy,
marriage is what brings us together.
I can't remember who plays that character. God dang it. I had it written down. Peter Cook plays that character, but yeah. Marriage is what brings us together today. And then, of course, how many times have you said Princess Bahahab? You're like, that is how do you get that sound out of the letters that spell Buttercup? Bahahab. So stupid, man. I'm glad we did this movie first. I could probably talk for another 2 hours about this, but you know what? We're down to the last 15 minutes. So we're going to cram just a little bit. But chat, also, if there's something we did not yet discuss that's happened in the part of the movie we've already passed over, feel free to bring it up. We don't have to cut it off right at 7. I know a lot of folks are stuck at home a little bit more, so we can go a little bit past 7 tonight, at least on my end. I don't know how you're going to feel about that, John.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right, so we'll just keep going as long as we have a need. Although I might have to take a pee break at 7 o'clock just because I've drank all this tea here. But yeah.
And it's the way that they keep cutting back to the wedding, and it seems his pronunciation seemed to get more and more ridiculous.
Right.
It's like your mom has written down right there. Love. True love.
True love. Yeah. So stupid though. We'll follow you forever. And he just like trails off. So silly, man. But that's just another one of those things. Like, but nobody's giggling or laughing in the movie. The movie is taking it seriously. We're not meant to, but all the characters in the story are. Yeah. And I can just imagine that's not how he's meant to sound, but that's just the grandpa making that silly voice for his grandson. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly. Well, and there is actually an argument to be made that the grandfather is altering things as they go
Right.
throughout.
That is a possibility. Like
Especially, I'll mention that when we get to the last scene, but yeah, because he's the one telling the story, so it's up to him to be inventive as he goes along.
Jaded Red's Head says, and Juno was at a wedding that did that. Where did they have a somebody who talked in that sort of weird accent?
I hope it was done as an homage to the Princess Bride, and
it almost has to be. I hope so, and that's hilarious. And a couple that can agree to let that go down at their wedding, they've got something going for them. I definitely approve.
I mean, pretty much, any couple that has a nerd theme for their wedding, I love them dearly for that. I remember it was probably about a year ago or something. I was online and I saw that there was a Star Wars themed wedding that a couple had at a convention where they were the characters. They dressed up as Obi-Wan Kenobi and Duchess Satine from Clone Wars, and they had the voice actors, James Arnold Taylor and the actress who voices Satine actually officiate.
That's cool.
The ceremony. So stuff like that, I just think is great, because you're basically saying we don't care what anybody else thinks. This is what we want for our wedding.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm right there with you. I mean, I'm not dating anybody right now, but so there's a wedding is not in my near future. But if I was to get married again, like it would have to have at least three deaths. I'm just saying, I don't want it to be a dull affair. That's all. I want people to enjoy themselves.
But so what's next?
So it's the burning cloak, and they scare away all the guards, and the castellan, who's called Yellen.
Which, by the way, isn't it hilarious how in the wide shots, like Fezzik is huge.
Yeah,
it doesn't really match up. Again, it's like
right. It's what they had at hand.
Yeah.
But give us the gate key. I have no gate key. Fezzik, tear his arms off. Oh, you mean this gate key? I've said Fezzik tear his arms off a few times in my life. Oh, I like that idea. Let's first dance to the Rains of Castamere at my wedding. You got it, man. You got it.
I mean, that's the one thing. That's just like asking for tragedy. I'm sorry.
Right. But we'll get together, Pedar. We'll brainstorm some stuff for my wedding if that ever becomes relevant. So they flee the guards and they get into the castle, and there's yet more hilarious sight gags as Wesley's like hanging off of Andre or off of Fezzik and like walking on the side of his feet through the hallway. And the way Cary Elwes pulled that off, the physicality of that was just hilarious. I'm sorry. Again,
yeah, he makes that look easy, but it can't possibly be easy.
Everything this movie does just is gold, man. And again, we've had little nitpicks here and there, but even here, 33 years later, it still remains one of the classics. And my own kids watched it and loved it, and I can't wait for my kids to show it to their kids so that I can be the grandpa and they can be the grandchild. It's so good. I also love the senile old king. She like gives him a kiss and she talks about killing herself. And he's like, won't that be nice? She kissed me. You're really not paying attention, are you, old man? Also, Inigo finally chases down,
which might be my favorite moment of the entire film.
Which one specifically?
It's my name is Nito Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. And then Rugen just running away.
Right. Yeah, he does like punk out, man. He really does. Like he only comes back at him after he's already been stabbed in the gut with a knife, you know?
Yeah.
But Fezzik gets to him with Fezzik punch right through the door, which is another great like visual gag for them to pull. You know, and then he's like, "Here you go, buddy." I loved it.
And of course, but he has to leave Westley hanging, onto this, piece of armor, and Westley somehow finds his way into the bedroom so he can greet Buttercup. I have no idea how he got himself there.
Yeah. And then like the short monologue from Count Rugen about like, you must be that Spanish brat I taught a lesson to. I think that's the worst thing I've ever heard. How marvelous. And it's like, you are such a creep, dude. Like, we already hated you, but you're just not going to let us forget. We should hate you even more right now. Which is fine because he's about to get his.
And also, let's also note a wonderful staple of fairy tales and movies and all that, which is you have your hero on the verge of death, but as soon as he defeats the bad guy, he'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah, like that gut wound is not going to get infected. He's not going to die of sepsis or anything like that because it's a fairy tale. We've already decided it's a fairy tale, so we're just going to have to let that stuff go. Again, does it make it less than perfectly believable? Sure. But it's a fairy tale. And I think it is perfectly believable as a book that a grandfather is reading to his son.
Yeah.
You know? We do get a line that I've used before that maybe I shouldn't have about perfect breasts and whatnot. So we'll just leave it at that. I do kind of enjoy the line. It's quite funny, but it's also maybe one of the lines that didn't age quite as well.
Well, I think in the context of she's about to stab herself, I think it's really funny, and I think it works.
It's funny too.
I think as something that you might just say to reference the movie, especially if you say it to a woman, maybe not the most appropriate thing you could choose to quote. But I do think within the context of the movie, it's fine and it is funny. But yeah, out of context, not such a great thing to say.
But it is still funny.
Yeah. And and then I'm trying to think of, because it cuts back to Rugen and Inigo before Humperdinck comes into the bedroom. So we have the big final confrontation between Rugen and Inigo, where we get the repeated line over and over of, my name is Inigo Montoya, you killed my father, prepare to die. Stop saying that. And
starts yelling, it gets more and more intense.
Yeah. And actually, that's why it's believable in that moment that he's able to get back up on his feet and
he's on adrenaline.
And yeah, exactly. He's on adrenaline. So in the moment, it actually is quite believable. And then the questioning, where he's says, offer me power. And,
offer me money, power.
Offer me money, whatever you want. It's yours. I want my father back, you son of a bitch.
Yep.
I mean,
great line. Again, this movie is full of them. And I guess one thing that I kind of really and I do love that scene between them. Mandy Patinkin does get a chance to shine not only in his acting range but his physicality, sword fighting, while delivering that kind of powerful final moment for his character. You know, his
yeah, the way he parries off Rugen's attacks, just there's such pointedness to it as he is delivering his line of "You killed my father, prepare to die," and he just keeps it. It's like punctuation marks as he comes down with his sword to block those attacks, and it's just wonderfully done. It's beautiful.
It really is. So from there we move back to Westley and Buttercup, and this is the scene where he gets his final sort of face off with Prince Humperdinck, and it's not a swashbuckling sword fight where everybody's bouncing off the walls. It's literally like an intimidation and nothing more. Like my note says Westley rolled a natural 20 on his intimidate check. For all my gamers out there, you'll get it. But yes, To the Pain. I literally wrote out that whole sequence by hand about To the Pain, and it's almost a full page here. But like you can see, To the Pain, West, Humperdinck, West, Humperdinck, West, Hump, West, Hump. Yeah, I loved that scene backwards and forwards. I love the way he describes how your ears you keep, and I'll tell you why, so that every shriek of every child that's seeing your hideousness will be yours to cherish. Every babe that weeps at your approach, every woman that cries out, "Dear God, what is that thing?" will echo in your perfect ears. That is what To the Pain means. It means I leave you in anguish, wallowing in freakish misery forever. That's a hell of a line, man.
But then it's followed with, "I think you're bluffing."
It's possible. Pig. It's conceivable. We get a conceivable in the movie, not an inconceivable, but he says it's conceivable, you miserable vomitous mass. Which, like, Wesley's burns are pretty dang good. Or is it just me, or are his burns on Humperdinck here pretty good? He calls him what else does he call him? Warthog-faced buffoon. Yeah. Good stuff, man. Like, I wouldn't want Westley roasting me. But from that moment,
and once again, I want to bring up the score, because this might actually be my favorite piece of score in the entire film, because it's when Westley stands up to make Humperdinck think that he's at full strength. There's this sort of almost crescendo build. The music gets very dramatic as he stands up, and as you see the look on Humperdinck's face, it could almost be music for a scene from a different movie, which is very high on drama. And then at the last second, as he raises his sword, it goes back into a more electronic sound that kind of diffuses that ultra high drama and brings you back into the tone of the film. And it might be my favorite piece of score, because I think it's the piece of music that most rides that line of showing you that this is a serious, dramatic moment without taking it over the top and making it too serious.
Right. But I kind of love that Westley defeats him without violence. It's good. I also love that, like, somewhere along the way, grandson is like, "Who kills Humperdinck?" Oh, when we find out Westley is dead, he's like, "Who kills Humperdinck?" And he is like, "Somebody has to do it. You're ruining the story." It's just it's so good that he gets that invested. But then we have another, right after they kind of tie up Humperdinck and they're making their escape. And we finally find Fezzik, who's been missing since he knocked the door down. But I love I love this little exchange between him and Inigo. There are four of us, and I thought if we ever found the lady, hello, lady. And then Fezzik, you did something right. Don't worry, I won't let it go to my head.
And what I kind of love about, going back to what you're saying that he's been missing, I kind of love that for the climax of the film, the biggest and the strongest guy is completely out of the climax. It's like, in what sort of, you wouldn't be taught that.
No, not in writing school.
Yeah. And it's just genius because it sort of puts it on the characters who aren't just going to get through it all by sheer strength alone. And I kind of love that. And it's a beautiful grace note, and with him coming in with the horses, and then as Buttercup jumps down to him, and the way it's shot, and they, like I was saying before, they had to do a lot because of Andre's back and all, but the way she just kind of floats down, it's such a fairy tale, the way it's done. And it's beautiful. And then the exchange that Westley and Inigo have, where Inigo says he's been in the revenge business for so long. Now I don't know what to do with the rest of my life. And Westley suggested him becoming,
the next Dreadfire Roberts.
Yeah.
Which would be great in the sequel.
Yeah. It's great. And then they ride off, and you have the music, coming up, the beautiful theme music, and then it cuts away one last time, just as Westley and Buttercup are about to kiss, but this time it's the grandpa, because he's saying, "Oh, you don't want this. It's more kissing." And then, of course, the grandson says he doesn't mind so much anymore. And this is what I was talking about before, about we see that the grandfather is actually modifying the story as he goes along, because the line he left off with does not match the line he resumes with, which is first it goes as they reach for each other, and then it stops. They have the interlude, and then he comes back with "since the invention of the kiss" and so forth.
There have been 5. I'm sorry, it's a great line.
Yeah,
there have been 5 kisses that were rated the most passionate, the most pure. This one left them all behind. I want to know who's doing the rating, though. And is it an impartial third party? So, yeah.
But yeah, maybe that's a line thought up by the grandpa, for all we know, because like I said, the 2 lines don't necessarily match up, so that's evidence that he's been elaborating on certain elements as he goes.
Right, he's been glossing over some stuff maybe and changing things to suit the narrative he's trying to. And he's trying to keep his grandson interested, his sick grandson he's trying to bond with.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that it ends and he closes the book. And young Fred Savage is actually a good little actor, because you can see it on his face at the end of the film here. He's looking at his grandfather, and he is looking at his grandfather through a different pair of eyes than he did at the beginning of the movie. Yeah. And I was really kind of like, it gave me the warm fuzzies to see him, oh, this is not the guy that, he's the guy that pinches my cheek, but there's so much more to him than that,
Yeah. And of course that it ends with "as you wish."
Right. The perfect ending to the movie.
Yeah, it's a real gut punch. I challenge anybody to not get emotional over that.
I did a few times. There were a few things that continued to move me, especially between grandfather and grandson. Wesley's scream when he's having 50 years of his life sucked away, Man, that one is just like, I got goosebumps still this today when I watch it. I was like, good God, that's great. Yes, Padar, he will appreciate the kissing lessons once he meets Winnie Cooper. You are correct. Yeah, he'll be going back to, what was it Grandpa said about kissing in the kissing book? Apparently the book has several references to Buttercup's ascension up the list of most beautiful women in the world. Okay, well, good for her. You guys are like all coming out with the jokes now about Fred Savage and stuff. Good, and I'm here for it. Holy moly, am I here for it? Which is a Fred Savage joke. So that brings us to the end of the film, y'all. So I'm glad I hadn't seen it in a while, because of course I remembered like all the great quotes and all the great moments from it, but I'm glad I had been away from it for long enough that I could forget certain aspects of the film and see it kind of fresh again, because I did see it with a new pair of eyes. And it's still great. This movie still rocks. I still love it. And what's not to love? Okay, so maybe there's a line or two here in the movie that might not make it past a modern censor or modern audience's sensibilities. But, you know, visually, it's still beautiful. The sound, the music, even when it doesn't match up, it's almost for comedic effect. And as you have convinced me throughout this conversation, John, a lot of the things that I can sort of nitpick can just be hand waved away by going, no, it's grandfather reading a fairy tale to his grandson. And that's how fantasy stories of fairy tales are. The hero is in the right place at the right time because it's what the story demands.
But if you still want to nitpick it, you can nitpick S. Morgenstern, the author of the book being read, and not the film itself.
Right.
But
the thing is, S. Morgenstern didn't write the book either.
No, I know, but it within the film.
Yeah, in the film, the author of the book is S. Morgenstern, but the person that wrote The Princess Bride, both the novel and the screenplay here, is a guy called William Goldman.
I know, but the conceit is
right, yeah,
within the film. So I'm just saying.
So, anybody else want to take a last crack at bringing up something about The Princess Bride to talk about? While I still hear it all over the place too. People quote this movie endlessly from people from every walk of life, from every strata of society. Love this film, and I still hear quotes of it everywhere. Mom was talking earlier in the chat about she saw somebody there was somebody on the train, and like she told him to have fun storming the castle because he had said something about mostly dead or something. I can't remember what. Mom can tell you the story. And if she's still in the chat there, I think she is. She can type it up pretty quick, I would imagine. But like it's if you are in a social situation and you're not sure what to do, drop a few quotes from The Princess Bride. People will, and then all of a sudden you've got a conversation piece, because this movie is loved by everyone that I know. I've never met a person that watched this movie and didn't at least like it, much less love the crap out of it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to meet the person who doesn't like The Princess Bride.
Yeah, me either. Like, you have no heart and no sense of humor.
Yeah, so it's, you guys want to anything else from the film? I think we covered pretty much everything.
I think we did too. Mom says Count Rugen, aka Christopher Guest, is in real life married to Jamie Lee Curtis. I did not know that. But cool. Good for him. Count Rugen got a much better lady than he deserves. I like Newt's Princess Bride equals Romance 101. You're right. Oh, I don't know. Did you say you met the one guy who didn't like it? I'm very sorry.
That's a tragedy in of itself.
Here's the thing. Actually, I've heard this said before. He's African American and pointed there are no people of color in the cast. I understand that from a representation point of view, but from a story that is set in Renaissance Italy, I think I can be pretty forgiving of the fact that there are no Africans there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
I mean,
there's a Spaniard in it. There are people from the Mediterranean, and those are people of some color, anyway.
Yeah, and once again, I mean, I keep going back to I like to, when I watch older films, to have an appreciation for the time in which it was made, which does not absolve a film from making casting choices like that, but we weren't always living in times where these things were at the forefront of sort of conversation.
But even further to that, like the setting kind of, if you're trying to make it believable in the place and time that it is set, there shouldn't be people of color there. I'm sorry, but like if you're making a movie set in Africa 400 years ago, you shouldn't have a bunch of white people in that movie. If you're making a movie where the setting, the time and the place is Europe in the Renaissance age, there shouldn't be. So, yeah, I don't think that's actually a legitimate complaint about the film, personally.
But at the same time, I'm not going to begrudge anybody. You have any complaints you want to have, and I'm certainly not going to be the white guy who tells, someone who's African American that they shouldn't be upset about the film for, not having more people of color, because there are people of color, as we've just talked, maybe not black, but
right. There are people of Mediterranean descent.
But also, I'm not the person to criticize someone for feeling that way. So,
right.
So I'm perfectly fine with anybody can have whatever opinion they want to have.
And I agree with Lady Leaf here. It makes more sense than Firefly with its no Asian characters, because ostensibly there is a huge Asian influence in Firefly. But yeah, but again, like I guess I agree with you, John. I won't begrudge somebody feeling that way, but I don't feel that way. And I am somebody who does want as much diverse representation in my media as possible, but I don't want you to do it just to get a black person in a role, especially if it's like it doesn't fit the narrative of the story. But this is a different conversation.
Yeah, because
media is a whole other, and it's a whole other conversation that maybe we'll have sometime.
Yeah, because the last thing, because this is a conversation about the Princess Bride, so I don't want to get bogged down at the last couple minutes in this conversation, which deserves time onto itself. Because there's definitely a lot to talk about, because there's plenty of reason you could make arguments about, well, does something that's ultimately fictional need to necessarily stick to the realities of representation in the time you're depicting?
Hey, I don't know. You don't need to feel bad for relating this story at all. I think it's a valid conversation to be had. Nobody's upset.
But yeah, see, I want to talk about some examples that kind of, support both both arguments on each side, but the problem is we're at the last 2 minutes of a completely different topic, so I don't want to dive into it. I feel like it's something that we could talk about on a stream by itself, so I think we'll leave it to that.
I think representation in media is a fine topic to have on the channel at some point in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I'll just close out so that we can close out talking about The Princess Bride. I love the fact that this film ends with a credit roll with showing all the cast members. I always love that in movies. They've done it occasionally for some special stuff. They did it at the end of Lord of the Rings. They did it at the end of Avengers Endgame. And it's a very special thing, and for this, because it's basically a fairy tale, I think it's quite fitting.
Okay. Jaded Redhead, Kelly brings this up. It is likely to find Africans in an area like Italy as early as the 13th century. Okay. Okay. Again, I'm not as well informed on that subject. I absolutely believe you. I see Anna brings up Othello as a black person in Renaissance Italy, and I hadn't considered that. And of course, I understand there was some trade. You're not going to find a whole lot, but I guess me saying you wouldn't find any is kind of me being ignorant there. So my apologies, y'all. And I'm glad somebody has a little bit better historical knowledge to.
And again, in fairness, I
want to get it right.
Yeah, I think this would, which is again is why I think this would be a topic that would be best be served in its own episode, because I think we both would want to read up on it a bit to make sure that we were speaking from a place of knowledge and not just our assumptions.
Right.
So,
but anyway, I don't really have anything else left to say about this movie. I think we ran it through the ringer. I got out all my great favorite quotes. So, you got anything else, John?
No, just I love this movie. It's one of my all-time favorites, and I came to it relatively late because I think I was probably, if I wasn't 20 yet, I was close to 20. So I didn't grow up with the film, but it just quickly became a favorite of mine. And, it's just probably the best feel-good movie I can think of.
Yeah, it does make you just feel good. And, with the world we're living in right now, a feel-good movie is a hell of a good thing to have in your back pocket. And it's a great one to go to. So, excuse me. Hold on. Sorry. I can feel that scratch in my throat. Guys, I think my throat's just about had it anyway. We're about 20 minutes past 7 o'clock my time anyway. So, y'all, thank you for coming. We always have so much fun doing this, and you guys have really made this first one a success with joining us on the chat and throwing good quotes at us, and we had some really good conversation. So thanks a lot for coming. Again, join us next week where we'll have a couple of special guests, and we'll be looking at Watchmen again. Week after that, we'll be wrapping up Picard. And then I think, I'm not sure when I'm going to post the Twitter poll for which character we're going to do for The Expanse first, but yeah, I think we'll do it next week after next week's stream, because then we'll be 2 weeks away from the date. Unless we need to do it sooner. Do you think we should do it now? Y'all want me to post it now, or you want me to wait? I'll be watching, and I see your Amos there, and I know you don't do Twitter, Anna. I know you said that already, so we'll just I'll just wink to Amos one time for you. I'll wait him one more vote. So should I put it out now, or should I wait a week? Let me know. While I also say, hey, if you're still here, go ahead and like the video and subscribe if you haven't. And thank you. I see a lot of Amos love in that poll there, or in the chat there already. So we'll see. But yeah, I got three additional names to add to the Amos, vote in the poll. So yeah, come back next week. Watchmen with the regular crew, but also Alicia Kingston and Sanrixian, and maybe Sanrio will be doing some art. We can kind of hope so. Yeah, look forward to it. So you know what it is. Peace, and as you wish.
Bye, guys.
Bye, y'all. Be excellent to each other. I can't not say it. Peace and be excellent to each other.